Okay, I'm back again. This is part three of the Electoral Reform Act. Everybody go check out phi-beta-iota.net. Robert Davis Steele's website. It's very good. Has a lot of good information. Um, Now we're on to number seven, open primaries. Now this is an obvious one too. Um, Here's the rigged system: controlled primaries manipulated by national organization. This ends all form of party manipulation on how the nominee is chosen. Indeed, there's much to be said about ending all former parties and involvement in the election process once all individual candidates can count on you. Yeah, this is what I was saying previously. Um, we need to get rid of primaries altogether. There shouldn't be any primaries. And then what you could do now, absolutely, positively, individual registered voters should never have to have a party affiliation. That is absolutely the most ridiculous, stupid thing in the world. Even if you had parties still, where the candidates still had a party affiliation, a voter should never have to have a party affiliation. So that's one thing we can get rid of immediately. Let's just get rid of having to register as a certain party. You register as an American citizen, period. But I think also we should probably get rid of parties altogether. Party does nothing. I mean, all a party does, I think the whole system has been designed to uh, control people. Really, I mean, if you get right down to it, from ancient times, people who have been in charge of the world and in charge of whatever aspects of countries, regions, or whatever, they always use the thing called divide and conquer, or basically, uh, it's kind of like Jesse Ventura says that professional wrestling um, prepared him perfectly for politics because it's the same. Whereas, I mean, the idea is if you watch professional wrestling, you got a bad guy and you got a good guy. Okay, they're actors. They're fucking actors. They're not. The bad guy is not a bad guy. The bad guy could be the sweetest guy in the world. I mean, if it's Jesse Ventura, is probably much nicer than like a character like Hulk Hogan or somebody else in real life. I mean, he's actually really a good person, but he always pretended to be a bad guy. It's like just like a movie. It's an actor. They act like that. So anyway, it's the same thing in politics. You got the Republicans and you got the Democrats, and they pretend, you know, to be. I mean, the thing that's a little bit different is that mostly on wrestling, uh, there aren't a lot of bad people who say I'm rooting for the bad guy. So they like to have a bad guy and a good guy. In politics, um, it's more tricky. It's kind of like the aspect of like a football team or a baseball team, where there's not really a bad guy and a good guy, but it's your team. You got your team and the other team. Actually, sports is another great analogy about the whole thing. They have dumbed down the American people in every country, basically, uh, where they give you two or more things, okay, and you belong to this team or that team, right? And you hate the other team. Actually, it happens with countrywide too. That's what they're doing with Russia right now. Russia, ooh, Russia's the bad guy, right? you know, it was Russia was the bad guy when I was growing up in the '80s, right? Then, Cold War ended and whatever, and then they said, "Hey, what are we gonna do now?" Uh, I thought we were gonna have a really great world, basically, until the Clintons got in the office, and they just totally fucked everything up. But during the Clintons' time, it was kind of like, we had a chance. We had a chance to be a great world and go to the great thing, but they decided to create another whole thing. Now, it wasn't until Bush number two got in office, though, that 9/11 happened, and then it went from Russia bad guy to now, you know, Islamic terrorists are the bad guys. You know what I'm saying? So they created a new boogeyman. We always got to have a boogeyman. So right now, what's happening is again, we still got the Islamic terrorists, but the deep state and the people behind the scenes, they aren't really, um, they kind of don't care about that anymore. It's funny. You see these people like John McCain, Hillary Clinton, All these people, these warmongers, neocons, or neoliberals. Neoliberal and neocon is basically the same thing. They just once again, it's two. They're the same. Like Republicans, Democrats, they're the same, right? But you uh, you act like, oh, your team is this one or that one, and your enemy is the other one, right? Meanwhile, they've distracted you with your team or the other team, and meanwhile, both of them, the people that are in the position of power, is just robbing everybody blind. They're just robbing all of us. So they want you not to notice. They never want you to notice what's really going on. They want to give you a fake narrative to get you fighting with your neighbor or whatever about my team or this idea or that idea or whatever, all these little concepts that are meaningless in the real world. Meanwhile, these people on top are still in control of everything. All right, I'm sorry I went on a big tangent about this, but the idea of party is meaningless. It's stupid because obviously, uh, if you've ever, instead of just saying, "Oh, that's a Republican, so I'm going to vote for him," or "That's a Democrat, I'm going to vote for her or him or whatever," um, if you actually drill down into the ideas and concepts of each individual person, you will see that the Democrat or Republican or whatever party affiliation means nothing, because you'll see that certain people have certain ideas about policy and stuff that you agree with, and other stuff that you don't agree with, and then you got the other guy, whether it's in your party or not. Um, I mean, really, and then you'll got the people who they just lie. Okay, so they lie about everything. So it's really the people on top. Um, like Obama's a perfect example. If you took Obama, especially in 2008 when he was talking about hope and change and all this stuff, everything he said sounded, if you're progressive or whatever, it sounded good. I mean, he was on the right side of almost every issue, right? Now he gets into office and he doesn't do any of it. I mean, he didn't do anything. I literally, I can't put my finger on one positive thing that the guy actually did. Um, and there's a lot of things that he went completely in the opposite direction on. Now Bush is the same way. George Bush, you go back. Bill Clinton, go back to Bill Clinton. So parties are really a way to manipulate the thing. As George Carlin says, it makes you think you have an idea of choice. You're choosing, right? You choose between this or that, right? Coke or Pepsi. Well, you don't have a choice because either side is the same. So anyway, that's a long-winded way to say parties are ridiculous. So if we have an open primary, basically what an open primary is going to do for you is an open primary will allow us to um, vote for each candidate, and each candidate will have to tell us what they stand for, and we'll have to do some research on each candidate and find out if they stand for what we stand for. So you get what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't really matter anything about what party affiliation. And then I don't know how he's going to do the open primary. I think he said in another thing that you vote for three people in the primary and then three people in the election, in the general. Or you could have 20, 30, however many people in the primary, and then you narrow it down to the three, and then the three people in the general election, and then you narrow it down to one, obviously. So that's how it would work. Now in California, we do have. Well, I won't bring this up quite yet because this is ranked choice voting, which comes later. All right, here's another thing: election day, holiday, free transport. Um, so there's a lot of election day inconveniences. For instance, they closed, and this is how Republicans get votes sometimes. I guess Democrats can get votes too. In a rich neighborhood who maybe votes more Republican, what they'll do is they'll close down a lot of the things, so you have to wait forever. Another thing is, a lot of people who vote, I don't know, maybe working people and stuff like that, poor people, or the lower end on the economic scale, they can't really get away. They can't really take the day off or whatever. So they'll have to run down to the voting machine, and if the voting machine is packed with people because they're all doing it after work or something like that, then they don't get to vote. So they lost their vote. Now I think, well, we'll go on because the next thing is electronic voting machines. But anyway, voting by mail and internet. Um, we'll discuss it. So he says, I don't, they have a Tuesday. They always put it on Tuesday for some reason. I don't know when they ever came up with this idea of Tuesday, but it should be a national holiday. I don't care if it's on Tuesday, if it's on the weekend, if it's on whatever. It should be a national holiday. That way, nobody has to work. Nobody has an excuse for not voting. But I actually think it should be a voting week or more than a week. But we can go into that. Free public transportation also. Um, you should make every effort to allow people to vote. Um, at least 2 hours absent if needed. Voting by mail. I do mine by mail actually. I don't know if I trust it 100%, but it's pretty easy. You vote and you send it in. You can send it in at any time prior. Actually, I think they even count it beforehand, so you can get a good idea what's going on. And it says internet, um, exit poll integrity, and blah blah blah. So yeah, that obviously what happened in the primary was ridiculous against Bernie Sanders because about 13 states. There's a lot of information and some studies that have been out where 13 states found that the exit poll, and this happened also way back, even in 2004 election with George Bush. He won, but the exit polls were totally off. So they rigged the whole thing. And what they found out also was that uh, I think it was in 2012. Um, you saw online, you saw what's his name, Karl Rove, just completely lose his mind on Fox News because the exit polls were coming in, or not the exit polls, but the actual polls were coming in from Ohio, I think it was, in 2012, and Obama was set to lose Ohio, like they rigged it in 2004 for George Bush. He was Obama was supposed to lose, but he won. And what happened was, I believe, election integrity people and some other lawyers, they got involved and they had to have people out there on the polls, and they had to. Well, what happened was, since there was increased scrutiny, and the government and the FBI and maybe some other people were involved in watching what was happening. They couldn't just blatantly cheat like they did in 2004. So Obama won in 2012 when he wasn't supposed to. That's why Karl Rove thought the cheat was in, and he was surprised that the cheat was not in. But in 2016 primary, Democrats, Hillary Clinton and her minions were able to cheat, although according to Robert David Steele and others, what happened was towards the general election against Trump, Hillary Clinton was going to try to cheat again, but um, they started complaining about Russia hacking the voting machines, which is completely ridiculous. But that's what they were saying all up until November 8th. They were saying, "Oh yeah, Russia's probably going to hack." So what happened was the FBI got involved and the DHS got involved, and the higher scrutiny. See, what happens is Hillary Clinton doesn't have to go down to the minions on each thing and say, "Hey, you need to cheat the vote, or you need to do this, you need to do that." What happens? We have a system of cheating, right? And all somebody does is flip the switch on the voter machine, or, for instance, let's say you put all your vote, even paper ballots can be cheated because what happens is, let's say you have a box, there's 1,000 Trump votes and 1,000 Hillary Clinton votes, right? Well, you put all these 1,000 votes in there, you're supposed to close it, and you're supposed to, if there's a recount, then they break the seal and reopen it. Well, but what happens if, when you're going to store these or bring these boxes of votes to the centralized location, uh, what happens if you lose a box or two, or a couple of extra boxes gets added to the pile? You see what I'm saying? So in the old days, that's how they cheated. They would add boxes of like 1,000 Trump votes all of a sudden appeared or disappeared. Whoever you want to win. So these minions in all these um, localities, like for instance, I'm in San Diego right now, and what happened was, oh, this goes back to the 2004 election too. They found out that the election was definitely rigged. Two people went to jail. Another guy called Michael Vu was another guy who, in the Ohio election, he rigged it. He didn't go to jail for some reason. I don't know how he snaked his way out of there. But that son of a bitch came to San Diego. So now he's sitting over here as the election. I forgot the name of his position, but anyway, he's in charge of all the elections here in San Diego. Now, this is the one reason why I think my vote wasn't counted, because I think that son of a bitch didn't count my vote because I voted for Jill. I voted for Bernie Sanders number one. And actually, here's the interesting part. I was going around San Diego and a bunch of other places. I was doing phone calls, I was doing canvassing, I was doing all kinds of stuff. Literally, every person I talked to either was going to vote for Bernie Sanders or Trump. Period. I I don't think I met one person. I mean, all right, I'm gonna lie. I met some people. There were a few people, Hillary Clinton people, okay? But I mean the vast majority, and the vast majority of people I met. So the idea that Hillary or Clinton beat Bernie Sanders in California is just beyond my imagination. That's just so that was, even though I told you there's 13 states where the exit polls were totally off, that doesn't include California. California, get this, what they did in California was they didn't even have exit polls. The same people from Truth Vote, I think it was truthvote.org, were over here saying that they wanted to make sure the vote was legitimate in California on the primary. And so what happened was, and you got to realize, this is going back to the other point about polling. These polling agencies work for the big media companies. Okay, they're the ones that pay them to do the polling. Now, if you ask any of these polling companies, one of the little wink and nod is what they say is they give you the result that you expect to have. In other words, if they know that you want a certain politician to win, that certain politician is going to win. They want to give you results that you like. That way you keep paying them to come back and give them the same result. So these polling companies are fake. They're not really. Um, you could say it's monetarily just for the profit because they want to keep being used. Because if I'm a polling company and I give you a result that is the opposite of what you want, you're going to go to another polling company. Okay, that's why I kind of like the whole idea of capitalism. Anyway, is a little bit screwed up because when you have a profit motive, that kind of eliminates integrity in the system. It kind of changes. Now this is a totally different subject, so I'm sorry I'm just like going off on tangents right and left. But the idea of capitalism, um, the reason why I think it's not really, it may have been a good system at some point, but really for things that are really important like voting and healthcare and water and energy and things like that, it's not good because somebody's making money at the expense of the democracy or your food or your energy and your lights and whatnot. So anyway, I think I will wrap this one up right now, and I'll have to come back for another section.